When you see Chained Echoes in action for the first time, you might mistake it for a forgotten Squaresoft JRPG from the 90s. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Chained Echoes was created by a single German developer over the course of 7 years. And this is why his game rivals Chrono Trigger, what many consider the greatest JRPG ever made. Matthias Linda began his career by creating fan-made RPGs with RPG Maker in his spare time, before starting development on Chained Echoes in 2016. The German developer spent his childhood playing the best JRPGs of all time, and Chained Echoes wears those inspirations on its sleeve. Chained Echoes' mech-based combat is a love letter to Xenogears, while its story setup and scenario are very reminiscent of Final Fantasy VI. That's not to mention the many nods and references to other JRPGs like Secret of Mana, Breath of Fire, Legend of Dragoon and Suikoden 2. But of all the classics from Linda's childhood, Chained Echoes might share the most DNA with Chrono Trigger. Even today, Squaresoft's seminal JRPG from 1995 tops many greatest games of all time lists, and for good reason. The game's development was helmed by Square's so-called Dream Team: Final Fantasy creator Hironobu Sakaguchi, Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, and Dragon Ball manga author Akira Toriyama. The Dream Team had a bold vision for the JRPG genre and wanted to create something that no one had done before. The game takes considerably less time to beat than most of its contemporaries, and leaves no room for filler. The script has no bloat and features not a single uninteresting quest. Dialogue is sparse, to the point, and every character has a purpose. This also extends to the gameplay. Chrono Trigger is revered for its fast-paced, no-fluff gameplay through its removal of random encounters. While enemies can still ambush you, their locations were carefully chosen by the designers, removing the frustrating RNG that plagues many other classic JRPGs. Even better, when you do get into a fight, you don't have to suffer through lengthy screen transitions or loading screens. Chrono and his party fight their enemies in the overworld itself, which improves Chrono Trigger's pacing and immersion considerably. The game also features a complex time travel story. The writers created a dozen different endings in the original release, an unseen feat at the time. To increase the JRPG's replayability and make seeing different endings easier, remember, this was a time before YouTube, Squaresoft allowed players to carry over their experience and gear to a new playthrough. While the JRPG was not the first game to do this, Chrono Trigger did coin the term New Game Plus. Suffice it to say that Squaresoft created one of the best and most influential RPGs of all time. Not many other games have managed to reach Chrono Trigger's level, but with Chained Echoes, Matthias Linda might just have created a worthy successor. Linda always meant Chained Echoes to be a love letter to the genre, aimed squarely at veteran JRPG fans. I grew up in the golden era of RPGs. I grew up in the best time, if you ask me. I always feel sad for those who missed this time, and I took inspiration from all of them. There are direct homages where I hope that players will notice and be like, nice, I know that scene, I know what he did there. And mechanics which are direct tribute. Making a good JRPG is hard. Players expect a game with a massive world, deep combat system and tons of characters to engage with. That also recaptures the nostalgia of their childhood favorites. Developers can easily fall into the trap of copying the go-to classics, without taking the higher standards of modern gamers into account. But Linda made sure that his game would be ready for a modern audience, one that may not be familiar with the quirks of these classics from a different millennium, because he knew that simply copying a beloved childhood game is not a guarantee of success. Take Yooka-Laylee for example. In 2014, several former employees of the legendary British developer Rare founded Playtonic Games, with the goal to create a modern successor to Banjo-Kazooie. On paper, this project seemed destined for success, and the team's Kickstarter reached over $1 million in 24 hours. However, when the game actually released, many fans were disappointed. Yooka-Laylee stuck so close to its source material that it forgot to innovate. Playtonic succeeded in creating a 3D collectathon from the 90s, but didn't take into account that the game would release 20 years later. It turned out that many players think about games from their past with rose-tinted glasses, and that actually playing them isn't as fun as they remember. Linda was keenly aware of this. Thing is, in my head, all these games look and play better than they actually did. Some didn't even age well, but in my head, they are still amazing. I tried to recreate what I had in my head, not how they actually were. This design mentality, mixing the old with the new, is cleverly woven into the first minutes of Chained Echoes. Protagonist Glenn wakes up in what might as well be a replica of Chrono's bedroom. In Chrono Trigger, Chrono's mom wakes him up to give him money for the fair. Things play out similarly in Chained Echoes, until Glenn gets out of bed at least. Instead of getting money, he gets slapped. With this slap, Linda tells the player to adjust their expectations. This game is far more than just an ode to Chrono Trigger. While players spend their first half hour as Chrono, talking to townsfolk and playing minigames, Chained Echoes intro lets them fight mechs, traverse a war-torn city, and eventually blow up an entire nation. Saying that Chrono Trigger, for many the only example of a perfect JRPG, is a tough act to follow, is an understatement. Just ask Squaresoft. Since its release in 1999, its sequel Chrono Cross is still an incredibly divisive game. It received rave reviews at the time of its launch, but is also hated by many fans of the original to this day. Linda intentionally chose to follow Chrono Trigger in some aspects of Chained Echoes design, and to deviate from it in others. Considering the Dream Team created a JRPG that is seen by many as the golden standard of the genre, these differences cannot be called improvements in an objective sense. They are what they are, differences. For example, both games only feature manually placed enemy encounters. The same monsters show up in the same places in every playthrough, and battles take place in the actual game world instead of warping the characters to a separate arena. This also means enemies can be dodged if the player doesn't feel like getting into a fight. Squaresoft opted for an action turn-based system. While commands are given through a menu, the player has to act quickly, because the slower commands are given, the more hits enemies can dish out. Chained Echoes opts for a completely turn-based system, where time freezes during turns, similar to games in franchises like Pokémon and Persona. Story-wise, both games also differ considerably. Protagonist Glenn is a fleshed-out character with a distinct personality. Chrono, meanwhile, is a blank slate. He does not have a single line of dialogue during the game and speaks only in one of Chrono Trigger's 12 original endings. Chained Echoes' storyline only ends in one way. Again, this was a deliberate decision by Linda. There are no decisions which will change the ending of the game or the story. I wanted to have that in the first place, but realized that such influential decisions would hurt the story. I wanted to deliver something with meaning, something with a message, and I can't communicate my message if I have to split it up. A sacrifice I had to make. Which design choices are better is up for debate. Some might enjoy taking their time to think over turns, while others prefer the thrill of making split-second decisions. Those who prioritize immersion may opt for a silent protagonist, while those who prioritize character development may like playing as a fully fleshed out character more. These preferences are subjective and can vary from one individual to the next. But there is one particular aspect of Chained Echoes that is undeniably better than Chrono Trigger, and that's its accessibility. For example, Chrono Trigger does not have any sort of quest log or journal. This can complicate the playthrough for players who take long breaks between sessions, or play other games in between, and the lack of fast travel can compound those frustrations. Chained Echoes introduces objective markers and a quest log to make sure that the player never gets lost, and lets them fast travel to almost any location they visited in the past. Regarding combat, Chrono Trigger only has a single difficulty level, while the difficulty of Chained Echoes can be tuned to anyone's taste. 3 different settings can be individually turned up or down depending on the player's preference. And while death in Chrono Trigger forces you to load either an auto or a manual save, Chained Echoes lets the player instantly retry any battle they have lost, even giving them the option to swap out equipment or skills before getting back into the fight. Impatient gamers can have the dialogue appear nearly instantly, and most of the cutscenes can even be skipped completely. There's no need to grind for health and mana potions either, because your party is fully healed after every battle. Animations during combat can be sped up or slowed down with the press of a button, and Glenn's default running speed is a full-blown sprint. The best part of these features is that many of them are completely optional. Hardcore JRPG fans can crank up the difficulty, ignore the fast travel system, and stick to only reloading manual saves if they prefer to play it that way. It's these accessibility features that bring Mathias Linda's vision to life. Of course, it's too short-sighted to say that Chained Echoes is a better game than Chrono Trigger. Squaresoft's seminal JRPG released in a completely different era, and Linda had access to over 25 years of games to study and analyze. Chained Echoes is not without its own flaws either, and some players might not agree with every design decision that Linda made. What is for certain is that the two games share more DNA than it may seem. Chrono Trigger is universally praised for streamlining the JRPG experience, and Chained Echoes takes that idea and runs with it. The fact that Linda developed this game by himself makes his achievement all the more impressive. Don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the Indie Game Oasis if you want to see more videos about great indie games. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed Chained Echoes as much as I did, and which other indies you recommend. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.